I started dancing when I was about 3 officially, but long before that, every time I would hear classical music, my eyes would light up and I would just stop everything I was doing, even as early as 9 months, my parents said. And then obviously when I could start to walk, I wanted to become that music, and the only way I knew how to become the music was by dancing. So I would dance around the house to anything and everything and probably drive my parents nuts. And one day my grandmother was at our house and she said, you know, you really need to, when she's old enough, you really need to put her in ballet class. And my mom said, no, you know, all kids do that, we'll see. And my grandmother said, not like that one. So I started lessons when I was 3. I think it was once or twice a week for an hour where we would do ballet, tap and jazz. And ballet was always at the end of class, the last 20 minutes or something, where you jump over scarves or you'd run around with wands or something. And I always wanted to skip right to ballet. I never wanted to do the jazz or the tap. And it just kind of started from there.
Yes, please. Katie, do you have a new leotard today?
Yes.
Do you remember who gave you that leotard?
Do a little shuffle step for Dad. Swing your arms.
Yeah, soft shoe.
Just do some tapping. Let's do some soft shoe action. Yeah, that's a good idea. Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
My very first recital was the sort of Christmas, I believe it was a Christmas recital. Very small school. My father was in the Air Force, and we were on the Air Force base living in Minot, North Dakota. And I remember there was a little ballet studio across the street or something, I can't quite remember, but there was a Christmas performance, and my very first time on stage was dancing to a song called I've Got a Dolly. And I remember just kind of being up there like, this, you know, this is weird and I love it, but I'm scared. And I remember also Santa Claus was on the stage, and at the time I was terrified of Santa Claus. I was terrified of any kind of character that didn't look like themselves. Like at Disney World, the ones with the heads, I was terrified. So I remember Santa Claus was on stage, so I kind of just stood there like, I don't want to dance, but I managed to do it, and I think my mom cried. When I was 5, or almost 5, we moved to Mobile, Alabama, and that's where I basically grew up. Ever since I was 5, I've lived there, so that's where I consider my hometown. And moving there, I enrolled in Mobile Ballet, which is kind of like the big ballet school there. It's one of the biggest schools in the entire Gulf Coast. And it was serious ballet training. There was no tap there, no jazz. It was all ballet. And I loved it. That's when I felt like, okay, I'm 5 years old and I want to do nothing but ballet, and it was just fantastic. And their recitals there are a much bigger deal. Everybody wears their uniform, and it's very formal almost, and it's, you know, true ballet school, which I just adored. I was very musical. I always knew what I was doing. But, you know, looking at me at age 5 or 6, I was not a prodigy. There were a couple of recitals where, you know, if you go back and see footage, it's kind of one of those situations where there's hope for everyone kind of deal. So, but, you know, it was just sort of the passion and the drive that I had. And apparently what the heads of the school told me later on is they knew that I was going to turn into something. But how they did from early footage of me, I couldn't tell you, because, you know, again, there's hope for everyone. I remember one recital, I think my skirt almost fell off and I was completely turned in, and I didn't really get quote unquote good until I was probably, you know, I started to show promise at maybe age 9 or 10. That's when I started to feel like, okay. going up to New York on a Thanksgiving trip, I believe at age 9, and seeing the New York City Ballet's Nutcracker. And oddly enough, at the time, it was, and now it's notorious if you know New York City Ballet, the orchestra was on strike. So we ended up seeing the New York City Ballet Nutcracker with taped music. There was no live orchestra. But I didn't care. It was my first time seeing the ballet, and anybody who's seen that version of Nutcracker for the first time, it's so magical, and you just sit there in awe, and it's over before you even have blinked. And I remember walking out of the theater and saying to my parents, I'm gonna be up there. That's where I want to dance, is the New York City Ballet. And because I was just taken in with how much everybody got to dance, the core. I mean, the snow scene alone is spectacular, and it's all the core. The waltz of the flowers, that choreography, everything about New York City Ballet I was just so drawn into, and at age 9 I told my parents that's where I was gonna be. My early dance training at Mobile Ballet was spectacular. That is the place, you know, as I grew up at that school, I was there since I was 5, and that's where I learned how to perform. The way Mobile Ballet works, and not a lot of ballet schools are like this, they have their own sort of regional youth company where you can audition at age 11, and if you get taken into the company, you get so many performance opportunities. There was a fall performance, Nutcracker, and a spring performance. And we did massive ballets, full-length Swan Lake, full-length Sleeping Beauty. You know, and so I really learned from a very, very early age how to portray a character and how to be somebody on stage, and I definitely attribute that to Mobile Ballet and Winthrop Corey, my mentor there, who really, really taught me how to dance and how to be a performer. And I got so many incredible opportunities and roles at such a young age. I was Clara in the Nutcracker, I think at the age of 13. When I was 15, I got to do the Arabian and Snow Pas de Deux. Just to have those opportunities that young, so many people don't have those opportunities until they join a professional company and haven't been on stage that much. But I started performing in big ballets from the age of 11. And I really attribute that to the artistry that I have now. One of the last performances I did at Mobile Ballet before I left for New York City Ballet and for SAB to move up to New York was a little sort of, it was in with the end of the year performance, and it was a ballet called Whatever, and it was sort of a comedy take on different kinds of people, and I was like the you know, the kind of girly girl, and then there was a girl who was tired and 3 cheerleaders. I mean, it was just really fun. But the choreographer created my section in a way that was very balancing, very fast, very quick. And that, after that performance, I remember people telling me, you know, when you get to New York for the summer, you have to stay for the winter. You have to be, you know, try and be in New York City Ballet, because it was just so in my element at the time. That was a performance that really made me want to go up to New York and want to stay there. after that, seeing that Nutcracker performance with New York City Ballet, I knew I wanted to be in that company. And I also knew through the grapevine, which if you didn't know, the only way to be in New York City Ballet is you have to be a student of the school. Peter Martins only takes from the students at the school. You cannot, there are no auditions for New York City Ballet unless you're a mega superstar who comes to guest, and then they offer a contract to stay as a principal, which the last person they did that for was Gonzalo Garcia, and that was, I believe, 10 years ago or around about. So it just doesn't happen anymore. And so I knew going in that the only way to be in New York City Ballet was to go through the school. So we sort of laid out a plan, and we knew we wanted to do that, and so I auditioned for the summer course. You go to the summer course, and then hopefully they'll ask you to stay for the winter term, and thankfully that's what happened. The thing that I had that not a lot of people do are two of the most incredible parents that anybody could ask for. They were always behind me 150%. They never pushed me like stage parents at all. My mom would often say, "Are you sure you want to do this? Just let's go be a brain surgeon. It's probably easier and you make like 15 times the money." And my dad, you know, he never discouraged me. He never pushed me to the point of stage parents at all. And yet they were willing to do anything for me. When I went up to SAB at 15, I moved to New York to attend SAB year-round. And my mom went with me. She was not going to put me in the dorm. And my dad, who is an endodontist and had his own dental practice in Alabama, had to stay there. And he commuted every other weekend. So they even split the family up for me. And they are still married today. They've been married for 40 years. So it's quite special. And so for them to do that for me and to drop everything and move up to New York with me and pay for lessons and drive me to all those studios. And believe me, 100% of the time, even when I was at New York City Ballet and I would doubt myself, or, you know, even through the illness and not the times that I was so incredibly down, so incredibly sick, they were there for me more than anybody. They never stopped believing me, never once told me that, "Oh, just stop. Why are you doing this?" You know, they were so supportive the whole time. So Mom and Dad, thank you so much. I love you tons, and I would not be standing here today if it were not for you. After moving up to New York at 15, everything was just, you know, I was so blessed to have the career that I had. I was at the school for 2 years, and within the workshop performances at the end of each year, I got principal roles. Pretty much everything there was to get, they gave to me, which I never really understood. I won wonderful awards, and I was taken into the company at 17, and so every dream that I had came true. But in all honesty, I knew that yes, I had the talent, but it was also because I was an incredibly hard worker. I remember being at the studio an hour before every class to warm up. Oftentimes I'd be the only one there. That happened in Alabama. It also happened in New York. I sacrificed a lot of normal things. You know, I didn't have many friends. I didn't sort of have much of a social life, but every ounce of me was poured into doing what I loved, into working hard. And you know, I remember on the weekends just doing extra classes. I mean, anything I could do to have this career, I did. I tell people all the time, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't want it and you don't work for it and you don't love it, it's not going to happen. You have to love it. You have to work for it. And even the most talented people, if they don't work hard enough, it doesn't happen. And so I honestly attribute that to truly hard work and to, again, my parents teaching me that. My father went to the U.S. Naval Academy, and so he taught me the value of discipline and hard work, and I attribute that to them as well. And so I tell students, you know, work as hard as you possibly can and believe in yourself, because if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will.
If you missed my video on my first wedding dress shopping attempt, it's on the right. You can click it to watch. Thank you so much for watching this very special video, you guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you on Tuesday.